เพราะว่าช้าเป็นเดียว
สายชาร์จอยู่ไหนนั่น
เสียบเยอะเหลือเกิน
สายแบบยากมันจะเสียบปะแหมชาร์จไว้ไงไม่ชาร์จเดี๋ยวก็แบตหมดเดี๋ยวล้างมืออีกรอบแล้วไม่น่าจะต้องใช้
3 โมงแล้วนะ
แต่เจ๊ชอบกล้วยหอมที่เขาขายมากกว่าของพ่อที่บ้านอยู่
ของพ่อกล้วยโอ่
มันในแปลก
พ่อก็ตัดกล้วยโอ่กล้วยไม่แกง
Time to eat, everyone. This is my lunch time.
So we built this property for $33 million. Today it's worth over $60 million in just 7 years. You know what's even better? Over 100,000 cash flow a month. So this is the math of the deal.
So Riverwalk Apartments is 210 units. We started development back in 2010. We actually started construction in 2016 using a $20 million construction loan plus $13 million in investment equity. And the total of that is $33 million. We built it, finished it in about 17, got it leased up, refinanced it in 2019 for $33 million.
So at this point, we are infinite. So in other words, this 33, which is a cash out refi, which is a new debt, pays off the original 20 plus the investor. At that point, the investors are not in the deal anymore.
So the investors have zero investment, so whatever return comes out of here is infinite.
Now, of course, we have this interest rate at 3.03,
Yeah.
which is a $33 million loan. So even though we have close to $30 million in equity, we would have to give up this 3.03 loan, which we don't want to
You
do.
don't want to do, right?
So we keep this in place, and hopefully our equity just continues to grow. But we could do another cash out refi because we're about 50% loan to value. We're cash flowing about 1.2 a year, or about 100,000 a month is what this property is doing right now. So right now it's doing 100,000 a month, or 1.2 million in open free cash flow with zero investment. And we got about 30 million in equity. So this is one of those assets that you just keep. Hopefully, if rates come down again, then perhaps, we'll try to scoop another 10 or 15 million and distribute it to the investors. Again, tax-free, because it's debt. You don't pay tax on debt. If we sell the project, we have a lot of tax.
One of the things that you get from investment in real estate, in addition to the cash flow, is what's known as depreciation. And depreciation is a non-cash loss that the IRS lets you take based on the value of the building. And it's approximately, I don't know what it is, but probably a couple $1 million a year on this. If we have $2 million of depreciation on this asset every year, and we have $1.2 million in cash flow, we have $2 million in depreciation losses. That means, for tax purposes, the deal's losing $800,000 a year.
So the cool part is the investor gets 100,000 a month, but their K1, which is what we report to them, the partnership actually reports an $800,000 loss.
ยังสวัสดอันนี้เขาไม่ยอมบีบมานะให้เธอ ให้มาเป็นลูกๆเลยดีนะ เรากลับมากินที่บ้าน
So they get cash flow, but they report a loss on their tax return, and they can use this to offset other income in other ways. So that's depreciation, and that. So the IRS gives apartments 27 and a half years depreciation schedule. So you use that against your cash flow, and that's a big reason why people invest. What they want is the cash flow, and they don't want to pay tax on it.
We can use other techniques such as cost segregations and bonus depreciation to further increase that tax benefit.
And this is precisely why you should hold real estate. Like, this is precisely why we don't want to build it and then sell it, because we'll have a huge tax problem. And by the way, you'll get all of these tax benefits the minute you sell. This is called recapture. So all the stuff recaptures. So you actually have to pay tax on all those years of savings during that time. So this is really a tax deferral more than anything else. But it's legal, and it's exactly why most people keep real estate for the long term. The interesting thing is that most people don't buy real estate to hold.
Right.
Like the majority, because they get all caught up in the equity, you know. Like we know we have 30 million in equity in Riverwalk, and of course that would suit Ross and I. If we sold it, we'd get that cash plus our investors. But then you guess what do? You put it in the bank, you give it to a wealth manager, and you know you try to generate the cash flow again. It's going to go somewhere, and so you're better off to keep it here and take advantage of the built-in tax benefits that you have for holding real estate long term. So this deal, Riverwalk, is of course on our portal for all our investors to see as it was when they invested in the $13 million, as is the rest of our deals. So if you guys are interested in taking a look at more deals like this, they're on our portal. Just go click on the link below. Can you imagine being able to build something like this today for $33 million? Today this would cost
200 units cost $50 million.
$50 million today. So that's why you let inflation work for you.
It always looks expensive when you're doing it.
Then 10 years later, you're like, I'm a genius. How many times have we done that?
Every time.
I remember the first building we bought, 9.7 million.
Yeah.
We still own it.
We still own it.
182 units. What do you think that's worth?
$36 million.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm not good at math, but I think that's good. So we have a saying that the bigger the brochure, the worse the deal. Right?
Yeah.
So because if you have to put together a big package and try to sell somebody on it, then it's probably not great. Most of our deals are done on the back of a napkin. Literally, that's how it starts. It's just like, okay, like Ross, he understands construction costs, so he's like, okay, 20 million, we need 13 of equity. And then, of course, you try to figure out what the value is afterwards, based on the expenses, based on the rents.
Right. And Ken can identify the rents, and he knows how much the expenses should be on 200 units. We can make a decision
Get very close.
whether we should pursue the project or not.
And by the way, we still could be wrong.
Yeah, sure.
That's the important thing to understand. But if it pencils like that, then it goes to the next level.
Yeah.
Which means that's when it actually gets fine-tuned.
So we don't actually stop at the back of the napkin.
We've never raised money on it. We always put it in the business plan. But the business plan flushes out things that maybe we didn't think about. And depending on what beer we're on.
You know, what did we not think about?
So there's things you don't think about, but mostly at this point with 75 years of experience, it's a lot of banter more than anything. Right. Like, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? And we just start to fine tune what the deal is. And then from there, we either shit can it, throw it in the trash, or we go, this is worth pursuing and taking a look a little deeper. And that second phase, it might die there.
It can die in many deaths.
Yeah, it can die, like we might not get the density here. Maybe the rents are off. Maybe the expenses are higher. Maybe the lender won't lend. Maybe the interest rates go up. Maybe the loan to value's low. Like, there's so many things that can kill a deal. There's huge risks in this business.
We go into every deal saying, with the ability to say no. So we have to convince ourselves, and then we have to convince our management team, or they have to convince us whether we should do it. Because we've never lost money saying no.
Right.
We've maybe lost opportunities, but there's always another opportunity around the block if you're ready for it.
It also is good. You find, like, especially hard-driven entrepreneurs, they just want to do deals a lot of times. And our employees are that way, and that's kind of the way they're built. We're in the business to do deals. So when Ross and I are saying no all the time, it can be frustrating if you work for us. Especially when we have a 20-year history of raising money on doing any deal we want. And then we start saying no for 2 years, I think. Can be frustrating to an employee. You don't want to take 20 years of experience and a good track record, good returns to our investors, and put it on the line for just to keep buying in a 2-year period. That's really the big issue.
We like to say we shoot for singles and doubles and not home runs.
So most people go for home runs. Ross and I, we try to just go for singles and doubles, and what happens is a project like this ends up being a home run. But we never think it's going to be a single. And that's what happens. You got to be super conservative on the business plan.
You're conservative and you're minimizing losses. You're providing consistent returns that keeps your investors coming back.
Ooh, looks familiar. Well, I think that's an important thing to bring up, and we talked about it before when we were at Silverbell. What happens is the residents tell you by which floor plans they rent. They also tell you what they like in the floor plan. And the management tells you what rents, what doesn't rent. It all is driven by the consumer. As a developer, we always try to modify the floor plan and change things based on what residents want. We found that this floor plan, the silver floor plan, just works. So why reinvent the wheel each and every time?
This property leased at 20 units a month and has done extraordinarily well and we've been able to raise rents. We save a huge amount of money on design costs, and we get a product that we know works. Why, exactly like Ken says, why reinvent the wheel?
So you go back to the original architect and you say, we want Riverwalk product on the Silverbill site. Then they figure out how to put the Riverwalk product, which is where we're at now, on the Silverbill site. And then that tells you how many units you can get.
Right.
And so you save a lot of time because you already know these units work. And of course, it's across town. The consumer's not going to know that these are the same units that we know.
And you tweak it. Times change and taste change. You'll notice that we have an overmount sink instead of an undermount here. We have black appliances. We have not quite the same lighting fixtures. Not quite. We don't have LEDs in all these. So I mean, there's some things that just happen that we adjust to based on what the consumer tells us they want.
The key is the consumer. You always try to deliver what the tenant wants.
And if we don't change the design, we know how to bid it.
Yeah, that's another really good point. Obviously, we know the price point of this unit across town, and so that's super helpful for trying to figure out what your numbers are going to be at the end. The point is this is the exact same 2-bedroom that we built across town. The rents are $1,900, over here they're $2,200. So $300 more, same floor plan, better location. I think that's important, really important, especially if you have 100 of these. So which we do. That's 100 plus another 300 each month. That's why location is so important. So sometimes you can stretch on the site and actually pay more for the site when you get higher rents, even though you saw the floor plans are the exact same. So this is retention. So we can't build here. So you do things like this, and then you allow dogs. And so the tenants can come down and let their dogs out in here, in an area that you couldn't do anything with anyway. So we do this in all of our projects across the country. You got to be pet friendly in this business, in my opinion, and we are. So that what we decided to do, embrace, gosh, it probably go 10 years ago, Ross, that we decided to embrace being pet friendly for the whole company. And so it's just a matter of, you can do different stuff like hard surfaces on the floor instead of carpet. There's things, because pets, there's damage with pets. So you just build it or renovate it accordingly so that it's minimized. But if you're a pet owner, you're probably going to get shot down at most apartment properties because a lot of them don't take pets or they charge really hefty deposits. So you're better off just to embrace it, come up with really good policies, and then your occupancy wins, it's up, and your cash flow's out, tenants are happy.
It's good for retention too.
Yeah.
People aren't going to leave it if you're nice
Right.
to their dog.
Yep, that's right. This is that handmade retention, that wall that John was talking about at lunch. Right, John? This is your handmade wall? I tell you what, we thought John was on PTO, but this is how he spent his time right here. Look at this wall, all hand-built, just like the pyramids.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you got like a layer every foot, or 18 inches?
Every 18 inches.
There's a layer
It's a geocloth. You can see some of it in between the layers. It's like a black checkered cloth.
Yep, I see it.
And that goes out about 10 feet, and it gets backfilled over to the top of the next layer of stone, and it gets another layer. So it's basically what we call a gravity retaining wall. The weight of the soil on the top half of it is holding it up. And because it's so porous, you don't have to worry about drainage on these things. It drains itself. Masonry retaining walls, you got to be really careful about getting the right kind of drainage behind them because they can build up hydrostatic pressure and you've lost them.
So that's why it's loose rock.
Yep.
Okay, so the water flows right through
It
it.
can go right through it.
Huh.
And that goes down to
The river?
the bicycle trail, yeah.
What a project. Every time. I mean, when I come, I don't come down here to this park as much, but I'm like, where I would hang out.
I would be happy to live here. I was going to challenge you to go sit on the purple couch.
Hey, I got in the pool yesterday, and twice a year I like to scrub the inside of the tiles, make sure they're fresh looking. Get the calcium.
It looks great. The pool looks fantastic. It looks great.
Can't believe it's 7 years old.
It's not a bad job, like putting your suit on
Yeah.
and getting in the pool.
Yeah,
hot summer.
No wonder we have such clean tiles.
Yeah, oh yeah. For some reason, all our pools are crystal clean.
Yeah, good.
Come on, partner. So every deal that we buy or build, it always starts with a story, right?
Right.
So let's tell the story about Riverwalk.
This site is part of a master plan, as you can tell. There's this development of the natural grocers and doctor's offices and the self-storage.
Basis, Whole Foods.
Basis of Whole Foods, and that's all part of the master plan of the community. We started working with the developer of the master plan in 2010 to purchase the property from them. It was extraordinarily difficult because of the topography, the design, trying to figure out how we were going to work inside, the restraint, their soils conditions. We're on the bank of the Riedo River. There's retention and detention issues, as well as setbacks and 100 things that we had to resolve before we could get this under contract and get it built. 2010, and we didn't start building it until 2016.
Sometimes though, that's not that unusual. I know it
Not
sounds
bad.
like a lot.
Well, Savannah Springs, for one, was 9.5 years.
We're playing the long game here, right? Like you start working on sites, and it can take years before you get them under contract and figure out if you even want them.
It's an extraordinary location. It's at the base of the Catalina foothills in Tucson. It's on the Craycroft Road, which is a major north-south arterial all the way from the foothills to all the employment centers in Tucson, including downtown, university, the hospitals, Raytheon, airport.
The apartments have what we call a walkability score.
Yeah.
And walkability means the proximity to other things, and this has extremely high walkability because you can basically go shopping, you can walk there, literally.
There's 6 restaurants within 1 block.
When somebody's looking where they want to live, work, play, all in one kind of spot, this is highly desirable. If we listed this property, because it's highly occupied at all times, it would sell very quickly. That's why you want to keep it, because it's doing over $1 million a month in net cash flow, and that's after a cash out refi.
$300,000 a month, $1 million a year.
It's doing over $1 million a year. That's after a cash out refi that we already did. So we already returned the majority of the capital back to the investors. We
Right.
still have some left, but it's cash flowing like crazy. So you don't sell stuff like this because this is kind of the whole point.
This is extraordinarily good real estate here, from a location point of view, as well as the design and functionality of it. It's really great.
One thing to notice here is some of these are 3-story, and some of the projects were 1-story. Many are 2,
Right.
and in some cases you've got 3. So different kind of a design, but you can increase the amount of units per acre if you're able to do 3-story.
Well, and you can see too that because it's 3-story, it's much more open site than if it was not 3-story. So we were able to get the density we need to develop it economically, have a nice product that is comfortable to live in.
So one thing to point out that's probably may or may not be obvious, but if you look here, Josh, you'll see that all the units on that side, all the units on this side, when you are renting to people, those would be premiums because they're not looking into anything other than nature, right? They're looking at the mountains, they're looking at the wash, they're looking at all the wildlife and everything down below. As you're picking out a site, you're thinking about those kinds of things because you're always going to get premium when the views are amazing. And this is certainly one of those situations.
Exactly like our projections were, although our rental rates were more than what we had projected.
200 units at the time.
Yeah, 210.
210 at 33 million.
People ask me, how can I do this? And I really don't have an answer. We got this site. Everybody wanted this site. And we got this site because I had a relationship with the seller that was 30 plus years long. And we were able to work together. He and I worked very closely together for that whole 6 long years that we needed to have to be able to get this everything entitled. That takes extraordinary patience. By the way, by the time we got it closed, I think we had in excess of $1 million of our own money. The capital to do the pre-development costs, and you need to have the understanding of what it takes to get the project done, and you have to have the relationship to get people to work with. And that takes just time.
I think the other thing that a lot of people don't understand when they look at something like this is before we actually get a bank loan to build the project, before we put a package out to the investor, how much money would we have out of this project?
Every bit of $1 million.
Yeah, easily.
We pay for all the architecture, we have to have all the engineering, we have to have deposits on, all the consultants, appraisals.
And that's not money you raise, coming out of our pocket.
So we're at risk for that if they're
$1 million, not including the cost of the land, right?
Right.
Yeah, so all of those costs are up front. You have to have the land, you have to have all that stuff figured out before you can go to the bank. And then the bank says, this is what we'll give you to build on the construction loan. And then the balance is the equity. So that's essentially how it works. The equity is the very last thing. You never know what the equity is until basically the 11th hour. Right?
Right.
So all that other stuff is years long. So you got to have faith in what you're doing in the process. And then only after you get the construction quote from the bank, from the lender, then you actually put the package out for the investor. And that's when you know exactly how much you're going to need to be able to complete the project.
And that's what it takes, all the risk for the investor, or as much of the risk as you can possibly remove.
Is to do all of those things first, and then the only thing left is the equity. And a lot of people do the opposite. They'll raise money, and then they'll go out and try to do this, and then that, of course, doesn't always, it's not a straight line. When the line goes sideways, we put all our money up, we get the land, and then we go to the bank to get the debt quote, and then only then do we know how much equity we need. We put that into a business plan, and that's when we raise the money. Thousands of things that go wrong from the day you start. Almost every week, every couple of weeks, there's something. Every single project.
So what would you say to those people who just say, well, it's going to be super easy, just go raise a few $1 million, go find a property, and you're rich, and you have a bunch of passive income?
Well,
I'd say
next.
I'd say they're not telling you the truth.
Yeah. It just isn't the case on anything.
This is not a passive business. I mean, yeah, you get passive income. There's nothing about this is passive.
It's full contact.
Yeah.
Until the end, right?
Yeah.
This stuff is full contact.
From the time you identify the site, then the fun starts, then you gotta put people in it, then you gotta service them, then you gotta pay the expenses, then you gotta make enough income to pay the expenses as they increase, and do all that. I mean, this is hands-on hard work.
You got several hundred people here while it's being built.
Yeah.
And then after they all leave, you got several hundred people here living. And you got to manage that, and while they're both are going on, you got to manage that. You got to go to the bank, and you're trying to get out from behind that construction loan. So don't forget, these construction loans, they're personal guarantees.
And they're all short-term.
Yeah, which means that we have a 3-year window to be able to build the project. And Ross and I have a personal guarantee on the loan. To build this project, we owe personally. That's a really important thing. This is a full recourse loan, like all construction is.
We have to really believe we can do this. Personal guarantee is personal guarantee.
Yeah, everybody needs to be concerned about those. And that's actually what takes down a lot of people, is personal guarantees. If you think about it, you can build 20, 30, 40, $50 million of net worth in a cycle, and you can lose it all at the end with personal guarantees, right?
Right.
Easily. I've seen it happen a lot with friends of mine. Plenty of people are on the hook now. Short-term bridge loans, anything floating, personal guarantees. That's when the contracts come out with the lender. The lender's pulling those agreements out right now. And that's why you start to see people selling, all those cars that they post on TikTok and all that crap. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
You're starting to see all that stuff happen. You're starting to see more assets. That's part of the reason why asset prices are dropping, because people are having to sell their stuff. And that's a good time to buy.
Yeah.
And so now, how is your process from stepping on the brakes for the past few years to now you're seeing this distress?
Well, I think the people that were living in the fast lane are crashing right now.
Yeah.
So you just go clean up their mess, and it's just a matter of time.
We're identifying the resources that will enable us to take advantage of other people's mistakes.
Yep. Inexperienced or have raised a bunch of money and doing projects and overpaying and all those things like they did. That has a way of working itself out. So it's just working itself out now. And then that's when, to be honest, we're not the only ones that are doing this. There's a lot of friends of ours. Yeah, there's a lot of people that are sat back, and they're just kind of waiting for all the, call it the first-time amateurs are taking a tumble.
So there are good quality assets that are going to come out of this. The key is to be able to
Amateur.
taking a tumble.
So there are good quality assets that are going to come out of this. The key is to be able to identify those and be patient and have the wherewithal to act when it comes time to act.
For all first-time investors that are just now looking to get into the market, it's just math.
Yeah.
At the end of this, it's 100% math. It's what do you pay, what's the cash flow, and how much you're putting in. That's it. So everything is math-based, and what happens is people start to compromise based on, oh, I think this is going to be worth a lot more next year or the year after. That's when people get in trouble.
That's a really good segue into this. When we evaluate a new construction project, we evaluate it for cash flow. We don't evaluate it for an exit at some finite time and assuming we're going to make some kind of gain on it. We evaluate it for cash flow. Because if you can get the cash flow, then everything else is okay. I mean, you can pay your bills. You can keep your people on the job. So we always look for cash flow first and look at capital events, part of a secondary analysis.
We know that we have 30 million of equity in this project. That's clear. That might go up and might go down. But what we really know, we have $100,000 a month of cash flow. If you sell it, you all of a sudden don't have that over $1 million of cash flow a year. And of course you have that 30 million of equity, but then you pay tax on that. And then you're just trying to redeploy that back into the market. So the real thing to watch is how much cash flow do you have at all times. And so Ross is right. When we do this, we don't do it like a big flip. We don't do it with a predefined exit. And yes, we can get that equity, and that would be amazing. But we actually want the cash flow. That's what we want. A lot of cash flow so we can continue to do this. And then it just continues to compound. And if we ever need it, we got it.
Well, an infinite return is when you are getting cash flow and you have no net investment. In this particular example, we raised $13.5 million and borrowed $20 million from a bank. We built the project, we got it leased up, we were able to get a new loan for $33 million, 3.03% fixed for 10 years. All of our investors, in essence, got all their money back, but are still seeing $1 million a year in cash flow.
So you pay off $33 million loan, which is a cash out refi. The first thing you pay off is the $20 million that it cost to build it. Then you pay the 13 to the investors that they gave you the money to do the deal. And at that point, there's zero. And so from an investor standpoint, why would you want to sell something if you have zero investment and you're getting over $1 million of cash flow a year? We rarely get calls from investors that say, I want my equity.
Yeah.
What they want is that monthly check. And that's the difference. They want a monthly check. They know that we always have the equity. It's like, why would you walk away from that monthly cash flow? Because that's what everybody's missing, is they want that cash flow.
A friend of mine calls it a storehouse of value.
So the best real estate deals always have one thing in common, as well as any deal that Ross and I have ever done. If you want to find So I have a real estate company with over 10,000 apartments, 300 plus employees. And over my career, I've found that the best deals always have the same thing in common. So the best real estate deals always have a great story in common. So let me give you the last two examples, but every deal we buy always has a great story that's easy for everyone to understand and makes it simple for people to invest in. So the first deal I'm going to talk about is just a 182 unit building that any of you probably had got into your inbox if you're in this game. So this is a senior community in a senior area. And the management and the ownership was really frustrated with each other because the Property had 80% occupancy. They were spending a lot of money on marketing, the revenue was down, the expenses were up, and so they decided to sell it because they could never get above 80%. Now the reason I like this deal is because it has a great story. Because if you really dug deeper, which you should be doing in any deal that you buy, you would see that all the first floor units were 100% occupied and all the second floor units were 60% occupied. And this, from a common sense standpoint, makes a lot of sense because these seniors didn't like walking upstairs. That was it. And so if they had a choice, because all the units were priced the same, all the ground floor units were occupied and the upstairs were largely vacant. This severely impacted operations of anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 a month. Having units 40% vacant when rents are $1,000 to $1,500 each equates to a lot of money each and every month. But they couldn't figure this out. So I decided to buy this property for the following reasons. I knew that from a common sense standpoint, that if I increased the prices of the first floor units by $75, they would now be priced differently, and then the seniors would, of course, $75, they would now be priced differently. And then the seniors would, of $75, they would now be priced differently, and then the seniors would, of course, start renting the cheaper units, which were upstairs. And this is a simple repricing. And so that happened, but it took about a year because everybody's on a 6 to 12 month lease. But over about a year's time, we were able to increase the first floor units by about $75, which equated to about $82,000 in annual revenue. The other thing that happened was because the second floor units were now higher occupied, we started to see an occupancy of close to 90%. So we were about 90% on the second floor and 100% on the first floor just by doing this simple pricing. But what that did is equated to almost a $400,000 swing in revenue. If you add an additional 30% of the 91 units, then they were paying about $1,000 to $1,500 each. You will see that this equates to about $350 to $400 first floor units by they would now be priced differently, and then the seniors would, of course, start renting the cheaper units, which were upstairs. And this is a simple repricing. And so that happened, but it took about a year because everybody's on a 6 to 12 month lease. But over about a year's time, we were able to increase the first floor units by about $75, which equated to about $82,000 in annual revenue. The other thing that happened was because the second floor units were now higher occupied, we started to see an occupancy of close to 90%. So we were about 90% on the second floor and 100% on the first floor just by doing this simple pricing. But what that did is equated to almost a $400,000 swing in revenue. If you add an additional 30% of the 91 units, then they were paying about $1,000 to $1,500 each. You will see that this equates to about $350,000 to $400,000. So by just repricing this property and managing it a little better, we were able to reduce our marketing costs, reduce our turnover, and of course increase the occupancy and the revenue, equated to about $350,000 to $400,000 more in NOI growth, which is simply revenue minus expenses. And what this did was this equated to about a $7 million increase in value. So if you take $350,000 and divide it by like a 5% cap rate, that's a $7 million value add. So the story of this entire project is we could buy this property for $10 million, we could increase it by repricing it and having better management, increase the revenue and reduce the expenses like I just said, but all of that would equate to about a $7 million value add. So a $10 million property at the end of 2 years was going to be worth about $17 million. So this is the story, and this is how we raised the capital to buy this project. So the story, it's a story. And this is how we raised the capital to buy this project. So the story, as you can see, is very simple for anyone to understand. And when you're raising capital or managing property, this is how you need to communicate, and this is how money is raised, whether it's in the form of debt or equity. Everybody wants a story like this that seems so obvious, but not everyone sees it. So if you want to see exactly what MC Companies does when it's looking for an apartment deal, you can download the link here. So now let me show you guys how you can do this on a much smaller scale, which is the next example. So this is years ago when I was a young man, but I remember how simple it was now, and I went on to do this later, and this is what we call a condominium conversion. Now I did thousands of units in Tucson, in Vegas, in Scottsdale. I did this all over the country. So this model can be done anywhere, but on this example, it's just a fourplex. So this is your traditional fourplex. This is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath for 4 units that we're renting for about $1,500 a door. So that equates to about $6,000 in revenue each and every month if it's 100% occupied. Then you have all the expenses, and of course you have a cash flow for whatever that fourplex is. So it's important to understand that this fourplex had one owner that collected 4 rents from 4 different people, and it was a rental play only. And then this property came up for sale for $450,000. If you're buying a fourplex and you're looking for passive income, you might have stayed with this model. But what I was trying to do was I was trying to convert it to condominiums. Now this only works if condominiums are and that to about 4 units. This is your tradition, can be done any condominium conversion. Now I did thousands of units in Tucson, in Vegas, in Scottsdale. I did this all over the country. So this model can be done anywhere, but on this example, it's just a fourplex. So this is your traditional fourplex. This is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath for 4 units that we're renting for about $1,500 a door. So that equates to about $6,000 in revenue each and every month if it's 100% occupied. Then you have all the expenses, and of course you have a cash flow. For whatever that fourplex is. So it's important to understand that this fourplex had one owner that collected 4 rents from 4 different people, and it was a rental play only. And then this property came up for sale for $450,000. If you're buying a fourplex and you're looking for passive income, you might have stayed with this model. But what I was trying to do was I was trying to convert it to condominiums. Now this only works if condominiums are significantly more in value than it would be if you bought it as a rental property. So in this particular case, this property was for sale for $450,000, but the whole point of it was to turn this into a condo project. That's it. Entire point. As a condo, those same 3-bedroom, 2-bath units were selling in the market today for about $200,000 each. So before I even bought this property, I said, okay, I can buy it for $450,000, and if, and only if, I sell all 4 of these, I can sell them for about $800,000. This is your traditional condo conversion. Now there is some work to take it from 1 owner to 4 owners. Which is primarily legal. And this is a condo conversion process. And I did this over and over. I did it with boat slips, I did it with RV parks, I did it with commercial office, and I did it with apartments where you can buy 200, 300, 400 unit apartment buildings and sell them off piece by piece. This is a fourplex, it's a full rental, turning it into a condo. But it only works if the condos are selling for significantly more than they would as an apartment building. And you see this a lot. You see a big difference between what a property would sell for as an apartment building per unit versus one right next door that's a condominium. Now, there's a lot of things that need to happen because homeowners are very different than renters. The first thing is to take this through the legal process, which could take 6 months or a year to do. But then you can list these things for sale. You have to set up an HOA and bylaws and all of those things that you have to do in order to get them converted to a condominium. But eventually you can sell these for $200,000 each. Mind you, nothing's changed. You're selling rental units as a condominium. That's all. But there's a legal process you have to go through in order to get to this point. So we did this all inside of 1 year. So we bought the property, converted it to a condo, and then at the end of 1 year, we had sold all 4 condos for about $200,000. Each. And we made about $250,000. And the reason why it wasn't $350,000, which is $450 to $800, is because there was about $100,000 worth of legal work and commissions and things like that. So we netted about $250,000. So again, the story is, whether it's your money or somebody else's money, whether you need a partner or you have your own money, is this process is the story. I'm changing the use from a rental property to ownership. I'm going from 1 owner to 4 owners, and I'm selling them off the rental units as condominiums. And a lot of these condominiums, ironically, were actually rented out by the people that bought them. This is a simple change of use real estate story. But the point is, anyone can do this. You guys have seen my billboard story. If you haven't seen that, just go click here. But it's when I bought a piece of real estate, all I wanted was the billboard, and I got the billboard for free, which now produces $30,000 to $40,000 a year. Who doesn't want that deal? Who doesn't want a deal? Again, a story that says, you want a free billboard that produces $30,000 or $40,000? Everybody's going to look at that deal. Every real estate investor and every person wants some kind of a story that's easy to comprehend. Whether it's a 182 unit building that's a senior project, or whether it's a 4-unit deal that you're converting to a condo, or whether it's just a billboard that's sitting on a vacant piece of land. They're all stories that make sense, and they're simple, and you can raise capital on them. And this is how you buy real estate, and this is how you do it simply for others to understand. So most people, when they're buying real estate, think it's a sales job. So they think the bigger the brochure, the better the deal. They actually stack it up with all these analytics and economics and paper and all this stuff, and they try to sell you on the fact of what it's going to be in the future. Those are the worst deals on the planet. What you want is something that's really simple. And then you can start to dissect all the little risks. What might happen if you can't get the legal? What happens if the market changes? What happens if the mortgage interest rates go up? Those are all risks that could happen in this 1 year. Now it's quantifiable. But what happens with a lot of people when they buy real estate is they jump in feet first and they don't have a story. Their only story is it's going to be worth more later. That's not forced equity. That's not what we're doing here. Each of these deals has forced equity. None of them are gambling. And that's what a lot of real estate investors do. They gamble. They say next year is going to be better than last year. That's gambling, and that's not the way you want to invest. As I said earlier, I got a free billboard that's now producing over $30,000 to $40,000 a year. If you want to see how I did that and how you how I got a free billboard that made me over $146,474. So like a lot of you, and hopefully you are on these lists. Now these are just lists of brokers sending deals into my inbox. This is entirely free to do. You should be on every person's list that you could be on. This one just came randomly into my inbox. And on the flyer, you can see land for sale with billboard income. So I was actually looking for the passive income, the cash flow, but most people were interested in the land. So the billboard became the obstacle on this site, which you'll see in a second. Now when I'm looking for billboards, which I've owned before, I'm looking for all the things that they have here. One of the things I look for with billboards and billboard revenue are traffic counts. And the traffic count on this road is over 24,000 a day. And that is very important when you bring that to advertisers, because 24,000 cars a day translates into people seeing the ad. Higher traffic count, the more the cost of the ad. So think of a freeway with a billboard is going to actually generate you more income in ads than, of course, 24,000 cars on a rural road. But this was definitely worth looking into more. The other thing, this is located across the street from a luxury 55 plus age restricted resort, and it was close to a casino and a major car dealership. These are key things I was looking at from an ad standpoint, because the entire point here is to buy this billboard and grow the revenue. I ultimately offered $260,000 for a $290,000 ask price, which they accepted, and I'll tell you why. When I got the addendum for the actual billboard, one of the things I loved about this is that the current owner had negotiated a horrible deal with CBS Outdoor of only $5,000 a year for the billboard revenue. This was a very good deal for CBS Outdoor because they got all the money for all the ads on the billboard, and all they had to pay the landowner was $5,000 a year. So this is where I saw the opportunity, because that breaks down to about $208 a month per sign. That's nothing if you think about what these people are paying for ads, which could be $1,000 to $3,000 per sign per month. So the current owner was only getting $5,000 a year for the billboard, and I knew that I could grow it just with a better strategy. So I contacted a billboard management company. Before I bought the property, I said, how much can you get in revenue on this sign? And they get all the ads on actual billboard. One of the things I loved about this is that the current owner had negotiated a horrible deal with CBS Outdoor of only $5,000 a year for the billboard revenue. This was a very good deal for CBS Outdoor because they got all the money for all the ads on the billboard, and all they had to pay the landowner was $5,000 a year. So this is where I saw the opportunity, because that breaks down to about $208 a month per sign. That's nothing if you think about what these people are paying for ads, which could be $1,000 to $3,000 per sign per month. So the current owner was only getting $5,000 a year for the billboard, and I knew that I could grow it just with a better strategy. So I contacted a billboard management company. Before I bought the property, I said, how much can you get in revenue on this sign? And they gave me an estimate that I should be right around $30,000 a year in annual revenue. So this is a huge difference from $5,000 a year, which the current owner was receiving. The other big issue, as you can see, this is a picture of the actual property. The billboard is smack dab in the middle of the land, which is exactly why nobody was buying the land. Because even though it's 3 individual parcels, you can't really build any houses or anything on here because basically the billboard's in the way. I also took a look at the cost of what it would take to move the sign from the middle of the property to this corner right here, closer to the road, so that I could free up the rest of the land for a builder. Then I went to my lawyer and I had him put an easement around the billboard so I could then sell off the land, yet keep the billboard. The entire strategy was to buy the property, move the billboard, put an easement around the billboard, and then sell the property for more than I have in the entire deal. If you don't know, I run MC companies. We have over 300 employees, own over 10,000 apartments, and have transacted over $3 billion in real estate transactions. Over the next 12 months, I plan on buying over $1 billion of real estate. I'm going to be doing a free webinar on June 25th, going over exactly what we're doing as a company. You can click here to sign up. This process took about a year, and it cost me about $35,000 to move the sign. Then in 2021, we listed the property for $335,000. We got an offer for $325,000. We ended up taking it. So we sold off the land and kept the now cash flowing billboard. So here's the math and the timeline. We bought the property for $260,000 in 2019. We did the legal and the move also in 2019. It spilled over into 2020. But now our total basis or our total cost of this entire deal was about $295,000. Then we listed the property in 2021 for $325,000, and we netted about $30,000. So that's the deal in a 2-year period. So the summary of the math is we had a 2-year hold, which was the $30,000 that we just talked about. From the time we bought the property, we moved the sign, and then sold it without the sign. The second thing is the cash flow, which is entirely what I wanted. The first year, we were still locked into the deal, which we gave notice to CBS Outdoor, so we received about $2,500 for the second half of the year. But after we moved it, we started to generate revenue slowly over time. And in 2020, we got just over $12,000. In 2021, we doubled that to about $24,000. 32,000. So we thought, great, we're really cooking now. But then it went down in 2023. We realized that our sign was probably in about the $30,000 a year range. And so far in 2024 through May, we've generated just about $12,000. So all in, we've cash flowed about $116,474 plus the original $30,000 that we made on the sale itself. So that equals $146,474. And don't forget, this is free cash flow because we already sold the land. So this billboard was free, and it's going to continue to generate a little over $30,000 a year for the rest of my life unless I sell. I realize that some of you might not be in a position to be able to buy real estate deals.